Goblin Ink did a fresh video on it. All right, we'll go check it out. Ah! All right, y'all. Welcome to where I've lived since the Gauntlet has released. Well, this in Helltides, because I keep having to go farm materials to re-roll items, because it turns out you can never have enough shrine buff duration. But I feel comfortable enough about this build to be able to communicate to you, like, one, what the build planner is. Like, I'll obviously have that all linked down below. But generally, what the approach to like playing it is. I'm going to include the entirety of my run at the end of the video. So if you just want to see my over 800,000 point run, which puts me in the top 20 right now, as of recording this is Friday night. You can go ahead and take a look at that as well. I'll just go ahead and include it. But before we get to any of that, I want to thank just a metric ton list of other people and take a quick second to talk about why I want to thank them. So first and foremost, we have First Nose. You might know him as a guy who cleared tier 24 Abattoir of Zir. For all intents and purposes, I'm running the same build as him. While we have Theory crafted together, the man absolutely put his stamp on this thing. Fantastic. Obviously, a lot of people have been running Blood Surge, but I've been bouncing the majority of my ideas off of him in general. 2, Operator Otter. Just showed up every once in a while and was really helpful, and I super appreciate that. 3, Ruse Cruise. Just was in chat at one point, but in addition to that, I've checked out some of his videos recently, just in general on the Goblin Ink YouTube channel. If you haven't checked him out, please go ahead and do so. As always, Sir K. Just one of my boys. I appreciate him. And he's also literally going and doing some research for me right now. So thank you to that. Scum showed up on the first day and literally said like, hey, your route doesn't look that great. He was very nice. Like I'm paraphrasing here, but go ahead and try this route. And while I've ultimately already optimized beyond that and kind of iterated on that and then moved over to a different one, it was just really nice considering he was in the top 10 at the point, showed up in stream and said like, hey, have you tried this out? That'd be pretty cool. As well as Vega. Vega also showed up and said like, hey, you should check out this route. It does require a different gear setup, which I've been messing around with in general. But I just wanted to thank all those people. And I wanted to touch on this very quickly. I know this is a long beginning to a video, but I want to give some quick context. I come from speedrunning in Diablo 2, and in speedrunning Diablo 2, every single thing that you do has to be video recorded and has to be available online for people to verify your runs. And what that basically means is that the entirety of the competitive nature of speedrunning in Diablo 2 comes down to RNG, which in the Gauntlet basically comes down to whether or not the bosses actually pull at the right rate, as well as just whether or not you crit or overpower. But on top of that, it just comes down strictly to skill and your ability to innovate, as opposed to like generally hiding strategies and not really communicating things and gatekeeping information. I'm not putting anybody down, but it's just been really awesome for the people that I generally talk to be so willing to share information, being able to talk to creators that I don't normally do as well. I just really appreciate that. So if you have your profile off of hidden, GG to you, make a competitive nature and like in general participate with things, and I promise you everybody will literally do better. Welcome to the Blood Surge Necromancer. It's a pretty simple approach to playing the game. You cast Blood Surge, you cast Evade. Every once in a while, you make sure to have Bone Storm up, and every once in a while, you make sure to have Decrepify up. I'm going to go over everything in order just so you can skip around, use the timestamps if you really want to. I would highly recommend it because you're going to want to check out the individual things that you're looking for. And I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about gear than I normally would, just because it's incredibly important to understand the fact that like if your gear does not exactly match my gear, your run literally cannot be exactly my run. And if you had slightly better gear in any way, way, you could go from my 800,000 score nearly up to 900,000 score right now with optimal play. For Blood Surge right now, the big thing that you kind of can't get away from is Grandfather. There's also a one-hand and an off-hand setup where you run Grasping Veins as well as Rathmas, so you can put Ghostwalker up onto your amulet, but that requires you to have different stats on your gear, but it is one of the other approaches to playing it. But obviously the Grandfather is really nice because it basically means that when we're not overpowering, we're still doing significant critical strike damage, and considering we're abusing basically having 100% uptime of at least 1 to 2 shrines, we're basically relying on that for the additional damage that you would need to be able to clear out monsters. You also need Shaco. I know a lot of people have been messing around with Godslayer, and I do think that Godslayer will help to increase your kill speed against the very first boss, but it turns out that there's just like a really simple optimization you can do in this first room, which I will show you, where you don't really need to worry about that. For the armor, I basically don't want any survivability stats on any of my gear other than maximum life, very specifically on this piece of gear here. But I'm running intelligence, all stats, physical damage or blood skill damage, and then as much maximum life as you possibly can. We are using Embalmer. In general, it kind of helps out every once in a while moving through a pack that's very dense to be able to overpower one more time, and this can make or break whether or not you got a good pull on monsters and clear them out fast enough. If you don't like it, you can go ahead and throw on Disobedience. You could also throw on Shielding Storm if you want to, but I promise you, you literally don't need any survivability on your gear. I've basically pulled it out of every single piece of power progression that you possibly could, and I'm still perfectly fine literally not taking damage. For the gloves, max attack speed, max crit chance. You can go with max overpower or intelligence, and then ranks to Blood Surge. This is where I'm putting Blood Bathed. I don't have a perfect Blood Bathed. This 18 versus 10% is actually representative of losing out on 11% damage per Blood Surge cast. So it's actually pretty important to get this down to an optimal place, and I'm basically just dealing with the best gear that I have at this point. We are using Tibalts as opposed to Blood Moon Breaches. Tibalts allows you to never have to worry about using resource on your Seneschal, and instead you can use efficiency for crit chance. If you're using Blood Moon, I would recommend using resource on your Seneschal, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. This is definitely good enough here though. And then for the boots, movement speed after killing an elite, shrine buff duration, and then I personally have intelligence here. You can go with essence cost reduction as well, but I think that intelligence is just strictly better. And you'll notice I'm using attack reduces evade cooldown. If you are using Ghostwalker on your amulet, you can get away with using max evade charges, which theoretically could be faster, especially since this particular dungeon has a channel shrine, and that means that we basically can permanently spam Metamorphosis, and those additional max evade charges allows us to move without having to attack. If you don't have Ghostwalker on your amulet, you need to use attack reduces evade cooldown. For the amulet, you would want movement speed, shrine buff duration, cooldown reduction, and then Coalesce Blood. You may say like, oh, Tides of Blood is double the effectiveness for overpower, but we're really trying to basically like normalize our damage, and Coalesce Blood increases all damage. Tides of Blood only increases overpower damage. So in that way, Coalesce Blood is just strictly better. You'll notice that I'm missing 3% shrine buff duration here and 1.5% shrine buff duration here. It means I'm missing a total of 4.5%, which is basically like 3 additional full seconds of shrine buff duration. And that is actually the difference between being able to do what I'm doing right now and getting somewhere around 890,000 points on the exact same strategy. Here's where we're putting Rathmas Chosen as the biggest overall increase to our damage output as well as functionality. It turns out attacking faster means that you're reducing cooldown faster here so that you can evade faster as well. And you are going to be spamming evade the entire time. And if you're not, you're doing something wrong. My Ring of the Sacrilegious Soul is absolutely trash city. Low roll on max life, low roll on corpses, a decent roll on lucky hit that doesn't really do anything for us here. And then obviously max essence doesn't work. So this thing could be significantly better. And then obviously Starless Skies. You just need a Starless Skies. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. For the Book of the Dead, sacrificing Skirmishers for crit chance, sacrificing Bone for overpower damage, and then sacrificing Iron Golem for crit damage. The skill tree is going to look a lot different based off of individual people's optimization. Just remember that if you have a Shaco on, those +4 skill ranks means that you can use a skill without having to put points into it and benefit from it. So here, just the 2 points into Hemorrhage, obviously maxing out Blood Surge with Overpower Blood Surge, and then maxing out Imperfectly Balanced as well. We don't care about making corpses here. I am using Blighted Corpse Explosion very specifically so that when our ring eats a corpse, we can use Reaper's Pursuit for additional movement speed, and then max points for Fueled by Death. You'll notice we're putting the 3 points into Amplified Damage without having any points into a curse, because we are using Decrepify, not only to trigger Artillery Shrine for max range damage against certain targets in certain scenarios, but on top of that as well, it applies Amplified Damage even if you don't have skill points in it. Obviously, Death's Embrace, because we are up close and personal all the time, and then Death's Approach for the maximum movement speed. In the Blood Tree, we're doing everything other than generating Blood Orbs because Keck W, although hilariously enough, we are generating Blood Orbs from Blighted Corpse Tendrils here, because whenever that auto casts in a really big fight of monsters, dashing through to be able to regen resource from our Metamorphosis giving us Unstoppable with Tibalts also means we generally jump through some Blood Orbs so we can overpower on our next attack easier. 3 points into Reaper's Pursuit, like I just talked about previously. Here, 3 points into Uninspiring Leader so that we have some attack speed, even when we haven't procced Rathma's Chosen yet. Obviously, Bone Storm all the way through. Then you'll notice only a single point in Standalone, because we just do not need the damage reduction, and then max out a Memento Mori, along with Rathma's Vigor. I can't tell you whether or not my Paragon boards are exact optimal, but I am trying to basically maximize glyphs, so we are using a 6 glyph setup and picking up any node that would outperform a Paragon node leading to another glyph, and I generally think that this is basically close to what an optimal board will look like. Whether or not you want to include a single glyph, which I'll touch on in just a second, is up for debate. Here we're using Amplified Damage. You'll notice I'm not picking up any additional armor. You do not need it. Up into Bloodbath, we are putting in maxing out Essence because we want to crit a lot of the time. I am picking up the Powerhouse node for the damage while healthy and the overpower damage, and I'm not really worrying about any other nodes here. Building over into Scent of Death, I'm still picking up Ruin. I've taken out the additional points from the damage to healthy, but damage to healthy gets us down past 80% sooner so that Essence can trigger and our crit damage can carry the rest of the fight. And then here's where we're maxing out Dominate for the biggest overall additive damage bonus, and then obviously that 12% damage multiplier is huge. Building into Flesh Eater, yes, we are picking up Flesh Eater, and then this is where we're putting Corporeal for an additional multiplier of the damage to elites here. We don't really care about resistances, but it's the easiest way to pick up the intelligence, and then also the damage for physical damage, which all of your blood skill damage is. Building down to Blood Begets Blood, I don't think it's really worth it to pick up the legendary node. I'm building out to Aggression. I'm also building out to Invigorated, as well as Vampiric for the additional Blood Orb healing, which helps to reduce Rathma's Vigor's cooldown that much faster. And then here's where we're putting Sacrificial. It's a magic glyph, so it's going to increase the overpower nodes over here. And as you can see, this one glyph is giving us 100% overpower damage, and then an additional 10% for having no minions out. And then lastly, for the last board, I'm currently building over to a minimum investment exploit in the Bone Graft board, as well as picking up the 610 willpower for the maximum life node here. Since you can build into 3 maximum life nodes, that's 12 maximum life, which is a huge amount considering that increases how much base overpower damage we do and how much bonus that we get from having Fortify value as well. For the Seneschal, Tempest with Evernight breaking in efficiency. Again, if you're using Blood Moon, you actually need to drop efficiency here, or breaking if you're not using exploit, and instead use resource. And I'm using Flash of Adrenaline with tactical, duration, as well as Genesis. Do you need the Uber Tuning Stones? Yes, you do. It's just a reality if you actually want an opportunity to be able to push into top 10 here. Now, if you're also trying to push even harder, you are going to need to eat some consumables. So the ones that I'm currently using right now when I'm actively attempting to push is Chorus of War for the all stats, the crit and the overpower damage, obviously. I'm also using Spiral Mourning as well as Sage's Whisper. These two are not nearly as valuable, but 40% additional intelligence is 4% base damage multiplier, as well as just a little bit of additional crit chance from dexterity. And then you want to be using the 15% critical strike chance dropped elixir from Helltide. You can get away with using the Heady Precision, which is 6% crit chance, as well as a crit damage multiplier, but you really need that crit chance since you can't fit Grasping Veins onto the build if you are using the Grandfather. Before we go ahead and hop into the video of the 108 point clear for people who want to watch that the entirety of the way through, I wanted to talk about some optimizations that literally start in this room right here for you to be able to offset some of these item choices that people may be making to be able to manage this first boss. Basically, killing this first boss in like 2 seconds is the key to actually starting this run efficiently. And if you're at the point where you're not able to do that, you basically just need to reset your run until it happens. But I have tips for you in case you weren't aware of the fact that you could actually do these things. I'm going to go ahead and cast Blood Surge. Why am I going to cast Blood Surge? Well, because it turns out that you need to successfully hit targets with the Nova from Blood Surge to be able to stack up its rate to get to the automatic overpower. And the way that we do that is by breaking these various objects around. So there is a small rack here that you can break. There is a small little, I don't even know, this is a cart that you could break. If you actually manage to hit it at the right way, there's another table here. Don't worry about it. In this corner, there's a small stack of wood that you can break. You can break this cart, and you can break this basket of vegetables. You'll notice that I'm now at the 5 stacks, so the next Blood Surge that I cast is going to overpower. On top of that, we want to have our Rathma's Vigor already fully loaded, so you are going to have to wait. On top of that, you actually have to wait for your resources to regenerate. You can always dash around to do that, but then you're going to want to wait for your Evade to come up off of cooldown as well. So get your 5 stacks from breaking the destructibles around here, get your Rathma's Vigor up, as well as make sure that your Evade is off of cooldown. On top of that, we have Starless Skies, which you can prep just by casting a skill. But hey, Mac, I don't want to use my Blood Surge, I'll ruin it. Don't worry, Decrepify costs essence, never forget that. So you can actually cast Decrepify 3 times and then have Bonestorm up while this gate animation is happening, and then jump in and then cast your Blood Surge and boom, he's dead in 2 casts. Like I just said, it's really important to optimize in this way because this is going to allow you to jump out of this gate with basically everything in a really good spot, so that the next couple rotations of casting Blood Surge and evading with Evade on cooldown will get you to the exact next elite monster with your Overpower Surge already ready, so you can clear that out in a single cast. Like, that's the level of optimization these runs are getting to. You're going to see a lot of that in the gameplay that you're about to watch. That's the small optimization at the beginning of a run that you can do. I hope that that's helpful. Enjoy the gameplay. Let me try something a little bit different. Oh, that was way too early. Fine, it never mattered. Any build guide yet? Snow has one on Reddit. I'm running a very similar build. Sorry, who was one? First Snow. But max roll will be updated shortly. Yeah. In this build, kill Duriel? Oh yeah, of course. Any build can kill Duriel. Hello? What the fuck was that? You can cast while running without stopping to run. That'd be pretty good advice. Sadly, it's not a true statement. Not to be a dickbag. Hello? Double Link did a fresh video on it. All right, we'll go check it out. Ah! All right.